I'm Charles Denning. Maybe I shouldn't begin an interview by saying that I am an admirer of the person I'm interviewing. After all, a news reporter is supposed to be unbiased toward his subjects. But I am not unbiased toward Joan Derryberry. For years I've been an admirer of her paintings. In my opinion, they are extraordinary works by an unusually gifted artist. And I've been an admirer of Mrs. Derryberry as a person of remarkable charm and a person who has contributed much to the Cookeville community. She is a native of England, born in the green and hilly country of North Devon, just a few miles from that scenic north coast.
I've so many mornings stood up there with deep mist down here. I've heard seagulls down here, but I've been up here on the top and couldn't see them at all. And then you'd see them coming up out of them. It's absolutely a magic place to be born, really. I mean, I was so lucky. It was just really, for anybody, I didn't then know I wanted to be a painter, though I was always loving it and trying to do things, but very childishly. Mother kept some of my things, but of course they were all lost when they had to leave that house during the war. It was a wonderful experience for anybody who would later come to painting. That's why to this day I can shut my eyes and paint the place.
As a young woman in the early 1930s, teaching music and performing as a pianist, Joan Pitt-Rue met an American student at Oxford University, a Rhodes Scholar and a standout in tennis and lacrosse. She and Everett Derryberry, a Tennessean, born at Columbia, were married and came to America, where he began a career as a teacher at Burritt College, at UT Martin, at Murray State in Kentucky, and then to Cookeville and Tennessee Tech, where he was chosen to become president in 1940, just as World War II burst upon the horizon in Europe. My admiration for Joan Derryberry has been mainly from a distance. When I would see a painting of hers in a show here, or read about her exhibits at the Parthenon in Nashville, at Memphis, or Sewanee, or elsewhere around the state, or read news coverage of achievements and honors going to her and her husband, now President Emeritus of Tennessee Tech. Then I saw her paintings one afternoon this fall in the gallery at Tennessee Tech, the first retrospective exhibit she had ever put together, a group of 37 pictures covering her 20 years of work with oil paints and canvas. I should say 20 years of loving work with paint and canvas, because her love for the world around her seems evident in each stroke of the brush. In going from one painting to another in that show, I felt I should do something I had long wanted to do, that I should sit down somewhere and talk with Joan Derryberry about her art and about herself. And I have done that. One Monday morning in early October, in her yard outside her studio, with a cricket chirping in the grass nearby and the rich colors of fall rising all around, we talked. I think you've been quoted as saying that you came to painting late. Really, painting is a reprise for you, isn't it?
Almost.
I mean, as a youngster,
yes,
you went to art school. And
yes, I had a lot of painting. I not only had it in the school, you see, they do those graded courses in school set out by the National School of Art Masters. They send out the sort of examinations to the schools, which is wonderful, I think. Just like they do here with the Guild Music Teachers National Guild, where you're supposed to reach a certain level of being able to do different things at certain age levels. So I went through all that, but also, see, I lived in this pretty part of the world where there was a wonderful art school, and I chose to spend Saturdays at the art school, and so I had a lot of extra. But the thing I really wanted to do was play the piano, and I think perhaps I made a mistake. I never would have been a great pianist, but I did get a teaching job at Oxford, which is where I met Everett, and After all, I never would have come to America if I hadn't been at Oxford
you
teaching
sort of just
piano.
laid down your painting then, and
So I didn't paint
your
anymore.
degrees are in music,
Yes,
aren't they? And
yes.
you were a teacher at Oxford. And
Yes, not in connection with the university, you understand, but a school that was often observed by the university in all the education things, especially in the summers with visiting summer students.
You even began a career, or at least did some concertizing as a pianist. Didn't you?
I did a certain amount. I was, yes, began it, but then, of course, I left London and went to Oxford to teach, and so that stopped that. And then when I first came here, you know, to America, I did extension lecturing in music for the University of Tennessee, all over a large section of West Tennessee where we lived. And I did some concert work then at Murray with the state orchestra, with the Murray Orchestra, which was great. Loved that.
This was in the early 1930s,
yes.
I suppose.
Well, you see, we were married in 1933, the depth of the Depression, and we came over here. Then I was 5 years in Martin, and then 2 years at Murray, and then we came here.
In 1940?
Yeah.
And still you were in music rather than in
Oh, yes, definitely.
painting.
I really only got back into painting when I was doing frog pictures for the children, or if they wanted posters for the, you know, for the different school things.
Not seriously?
No, just for fun. And I had never tackled oils up to that time, because the training was purely in watercolor. Drawing in every sort of form, and then watercolor, so that I'd never tackled oils. Walter bought me my first oil set when he went to the service, and he said, "Now you've got to get painting again." And I said, "I can't handle these, Walter. I don't know anything about oils." And he said, "Well, go and have a lesson." So I went to Roxy Wood and was utterly confused, but was bitten right off. I loved the smell of turpentine. I loved the feel of the oils on canvas.
As you had never been before. It had
no,
never meant that
I'd
much
never
to you
done
before.
it before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It really grabbed me. And I wasn't able to stop after that.
This would have been about 1964?
Right. I taught, as far as I remember, up to about 1961 or 2. And really in 64 was when I started painting, and it was such, for my own fun and pleasure. And the first time somebody bought something of mine, I couldn't believe it. I was so delighted. I was so pleased.
Why was it? What do you suppose? Why was it that just suddenly this opened up a new world for you? Was it that music, you'd grown tired of music?
Well, it wasn't that I was tired of it. It was just that not using it professionally any longer, yes, I suppose in a way I lost interest. I think it was that I was so extremely caught by the whole thing of painting. It opened up a totally new world. I was never outside without thinking, oh, I wonder if I could paint that, or what color is that shadow, or oh, look at how that tree looks in the sun. I was forever, every time I went outdoors, from really the time I started painting, became a sort of art lesson for me. I was watching all the time, seeing, and it opened up a totally new and very happy world also of friends and acquaintances, because I got into a whole new group of people interested in different things from the teaching element that I'd been into before. Just totally new and different.
That's one thing we here in Cookeville and the Upper Cumberland can claim to our credit, I suppose, that we, or at least our landscapes here, were an inspiration to you.
Oh, so much. Yes, so many people love to paint in this area. It's such a beautiful area. And of course, I suppose I just would rather paint the outdoors than anything. I don't know if it isn't perhaps a wish to try to reproduce it. I mean, I've seen so many beautiful little spots, round small towns, for instance, in West Tennessee. I used to notice it. Absolutely spoiled by careless building. I mean, they'd put up such dumpy things around a little town and dump things around to where it made it hideous. And I think my whole feeling was to keep it, treasure it, try to reproduce it. I think that's really the root of my whole interest in painting outdoors.
Mm-hmm. I make a few pictures, black and white pictures
I
usually.
know.
And sometimes it seems to me that I don't really see a thing
until I made a picture of it.
Yes.
But then I think making the picture of it changes it too. It's gone through your
yeah.
mind and it comes
Yes.
out the way you see it rather than perhaps the way it is. But then maybe that's
Well,
part
I'm
of the process.
sure that's the way in painting. And in fact, it's deliberate very often, because though you may love a scene, when you come to paint it, it may not make a picture at all. It may be very scattered and unpainterly. And after all, you've got to have certain focal points. You've got to have, and if a tree is in the way, when you're a painter, you can move the tree. You can move a river. You can put a hill higher or lower. And I frequently do.
Put in seagulls.
Put in seagulls where there aren't any.
And you do have a power, of course, that I or anyone else wouldn't have with the camera. That marvelous quotation about painting from memory.
Yes.
What was that?
Oh,
What was it
well,
your teacher told you?
that was what was dinned into us in the art school in Biddeford. It was paint what you remember, not what you
Yes,
see.
yes.
They say when you see a thing, when you're painting a thing and looking at it, you get in all the little details, and you simply don't get the effect. Turn away and look away from it, and then paint it.
Mm-hmm.
Check back if you want to, but don't look at it while you paint, is what they taught, and I've always done it, which is why, and I'm grateful to think, I've got a very strong visual memory. Often I've been out and wished I had a paint box and then thought, no, look at it, look at it. And so I take a good visual photograph, and I can go back and see as much of it as I need for a painting.
Was your painting that was in your retrospective, was that painting in Waterloo Station done from memory?
It was done in my studio, just thinking
You're in
about it.
Cookville.
Yes.
Well, the reason I ask that is because I like your notes. In fact, I spent almost as much time reading and thinking about your notes as I went through the exhibit as
My
I did
homesick
your pictures.
picture, yeah.
You called that your homesick special
Well,
in Waterloo.
why
Waterloo
I
Station
did-
is where you get on the train to go to
that's
Devon,
where,
right?
in the old days, and that doesn't do it anymore, which breaks my heart, but that is where the Devon train came in twice a day, and 5 o'clock in the afternoon was about the time I used to go down in that area, because I took a choral group down there once for part of my training was to go, and it was in a slum area down there in the east end of London, and it was grimy and dirty, and I guess nowadays I'd be scared to send my child down there by itself, but in those days you didn't worry. Sure, you went anywhere over London. There was no problem of danger or anything. And about the time that I went would be about the time that 5 o'clock one would be coming in from home. And I would look at it with great longing. Of course, that picture I did is utterly ridiculous from the point of view of any real trained man, I'm sure. I mean, there'd be awful collisions if the train followed the rails I painted in.
But there was that train
But
moving into that orange
The train
red
was
sunset.
coming away from the west and away from the beautiful sunset into all the murk and grime of Waterloo as it was then. And I had a very clear visual picture of it, as I do now, of almost all of my home area.
Can you see it as we sit here?
I can see it. I can just simply see it. I don't even have to shut my eyes. It's right there.
Are you homesick? Have you been homesick in these
Oh.
years in America?
I can't say, oh yes, you always want to go back and look at it again. But of course, all my family's gone. It is no longer home to me. This is very much home and where I would choose to be. But oh, I do often long to go look at it all again, see it. It's a beautiful part of the world I was born in, you've got to remember. I mean, sea and cliffs and moors and rocks and hills, it's painterly. It's just beautiful.
The pictures of the gulls and the sunlight trying to come through the mist and the clouds and the coasts,
Yeah.
the rough coast and the
Oh,
rough
yeah.
water. This is all, these were painted in Cookville of
Yes.
Cornwall.
Yes, they were. They were. Of course, mind you, whenever I've got a tremendous number of fair snapshots, which help me with the actual lay of the land if I want it to be accurate. But all of these, I remember so clearly. I could paint a sea right now, and I could paint any number of gulls coming in different directions. After all, it's part of me.
Mhm.
You know, it's no effort.
And while you were painting, feel the moisture
I
in
am
the
much
air.
more there than I am here. It's true. I always think to paint a thing is to give you a vicarious holiday. I mean, you're right there trying to get the actual feel it gave you, and it is like being there. It's like being there. I love to paint. As I said, the outdoors. I don't like so much buildings or indoors.
Maybe that's the only reason, really, for painting, is out of love of it.
Well, in
Love
my
of
case,
country.
yes. I think if I was very young and, again, and could study all sorts of different kinds of painting, I'd do it. But at my age, I'm going to paint what I love to do and what may be of some use that other people perhaps will remember the country as it was, because I think we're losing so much country, so much sea coast especially. There's not any more sea coast. I remember when Marcos Island was a lovely desert island with the most beautiful sea, and now you can't get near the sea. It's all high rises. Well, I want to catch some of it before it's gone.
Mm-hmm. When people talk to you, I guess people will talk to you about your paintings, don't they? About what they see in your paintings and why did you paint this? Do people ask you that kind of questions?
Yes, sometimes. Yes.
And examine your style?
I don't know if I've got a style. People say they can recognize my paintings, and this worries me just a little. I don't want to be so stereotyped that you can say, oh yes, well, that, of course, that's the way she does that. That bothers me just a little. If I have developed a style, it is unknown to me. But people do say that to me sometimes. I don't see it myself, perhaps.
You don't see the similarity running from one to another?
No,
I think there
not
is.
Really. Is there?
I think so. I think of it as a kind of a lantern effect. It seems that so many of your pictures, particularly the seacoast pictures, that's the way the seacoast is, with the sun kind of burning through the clouds. But there's a lantern effect. I think the Putnam County Fair had that lantern. You know, there's light in the interior of the painting. And when you stand away from the painting, you can see that light burning out like a lantern.
That is a real compliment. Thank you. Because I try for that. I think the thing that interests me most in painting is the way the light reacts on things and on for instance, now that Putnam County Fair one, I've done several of the fair, different versions of it, but I think the first time, and in fact every time, what got me most was when I was going away or coming to the fair, towards it. It was the funny colors it gave the sky over it. And of course, if I have it as something that you recognize the pictures by, as you said, I might have, Charles, I believe it is that I'm so interested in the effect of light on things. For instance, the light on that night sky is every kind of color. And each time that there's a Putnam County Fair, I love to go out there, park somewhere way off from it, and look at what comes up from it in the way of light. It's perfectly fascinating. It's the same with outdoors. Any kind of light on things reflects so fascinatingly. Makes it come alive, matter of fact.
I think even I, as just a looker at paintings that other people do, can see that. Some people have a dead eye as far as light is concerned. There's color there, sort of color, but no light. You know, they just put color, kind of flat color sometimes on canvas or board. And
it's very hard to paint the effect of light. I worked a long time before I realized that yellow didn't do it. I always thought the brighter the yellow, the lighter it looked. Well, it doesn't at all. But you know, when you begin, you don't know things. I think really one's best way to learn is to do it different ways until you find something that looks a little like it. I don't know. But light is hard to paint.
One other thing, too, I think about your style that gives it a depth and a character that you don't see in Hallmark cards, for example. It's a brooding kind of character. Now, when you paint sometimes a lonely seacoast, or when you paint Stonehenge, there has to be a brooding character there, isn't there? You know, it's not all light and joy and bright color.
No.
There are rims of darkness.
I'm sure that's right. And of course, one does, I think, thinking about those things, For instance, in the old days, I've not seen Stonehenge since they tidied it up and did things to it. But in my day, it was impressive. It had a spirit there that you couldn't help but catch. I couldn't describe it exactly, but even as a child I felt it. I think anybody would have in those days see that great ancient thing looming against the sky, realizing how important it had always been. And I like my Giant's Dance, which is the name I gave to the Stonehenge one. Of course, it isn't really Stonehenge, of course, because Stonehenge is up and down and lying every which way, you know. But I did them like the dance, in pairs, like it was the old name for it, you know, the Giant's Dance. And I wanted to get more of the feel of it as it was together, you know. My, it's an awesome thing.
You've seen the cooling towers for our nuclear plants, I guess, around the
I've
country.
never seen them, only photographs.
They loom up.
I
at a
bet
distance,
they do.
And
They'd be terrifying in their own way.
yes, just being there above the trees at a great
Yeah.
and dim distance. Is Stonehenge, I know it's not that, those things are 500 feet high or so,
Yeah.
but Stonehenge is still compared to trees, is big.
Oh,
is it?
vast, yes, yes. Because I don't know what it would look like now, all neatened up and fenced. That breaks my heart. And parking lots near it. But you see, in my day, you got off at Amesbury, a little village, a couple miles out of Salisbury, and you walked. And you walked 2 miles across the moors, and you saw it, you know, from the time you got out of the bus, and there it was, way off. And it never seemed to change. You got nearer and nearer, and there it was looming. And the feeling of magic about it hits you. I mean, of age, of just something.
The why, the big why,
Yeah.
I guess.
And I think one of my best ones is in our local hospital.
What is it of?
It
I don't
was.
remember seeing
It's
that.
the biggest one. I called
biggest
it
one you've ever
Cumberland Song. Yeah, it was the big one that scared me to death to do.
How big is it?
It was 11 feet by 7.
Oh, it's taller than you are.
Oh yes, it was.
You
a
had to
big
stand
one.
on a stool or something.
Well, I
like
had
that.
to put it up and down on the
I see.
easel. Yeah.
11 feet by 7, and it's what? It's of the...
No, I beg your pardon. Wait a minute. I think it was 6. Yes.
And it's of what?
I called it Cumberland Song. It simply is my idea of the Cumberlands in the sunset and in somewhat rain. They wanted a total abstract, and I simply can't work without some idea back of my mind, and it turned into an impressionistic sort of study of my feeling about the Upper Cumberlands.
You'll have to have a retrospective number 2. Do artists do that?
Oh, well, some of them are pretty widely scattered. They're in Nashville, and they're in Memphis, and they're in all over the place.
You name all your paintings, right?
Well, you embarrass me because sometimes I think up the slightly weird titles, and I don't want to use them. I don't want...
One that was kind of weird was was 5 and silver.
Oh, 5 for silver.
5 for silver. Okay.
No, I've got 5 gulls in the picture. Now, if you were British,
Right.
you'd know immediately. There's an old rhyme,
Okay.
you know. Do you want the rhyme?
Okay.
Well, if you see one bird flying, it's the number of birds flying it's about. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, and 4 for a boy. 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret that's never been told.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
an old English rhyme.
You had a small explanation, but you didn't quote the entire rhyme.
No, I just said 5 for silver, I think, or something. Yes.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to see just one. Quick, look around and see another. 1's for sorrow.
Well, it's a special painting, too.
My 5 for silver?
Looking up.
Yes,
It looks up,
the
doesn't it, for the
clouds.
clouds.
That was at a period when, again, I was following what a teacher once said to me. If you want to improve your painting, paint a sky a day. And for a long time I did. I went out there, and you'd be surprised how agonizing it is to paint a sky. The colors are so much paler than you can possibly imagine. It surely does stop you being heavy-handed if you try to paint a sky, because the sky is so subtle. Even when the colors are deep, there's a quality of light through them that takes away the heaviness, and it teaches you a lot to paint skies.
You've been painting now 20 years, seriously, for 20 years, devoting yourself to it. Wonder In those, and I know you're busy. You get up early in the morning
Mm-hmm.
and start painting, don't you?
Yes, I'm an early morning painter.
Did you see the sun this morning was like a tree full of golden apples?
It was the most beautiful orange peach color, wasn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I wonder how many pictures you've turned out. I know you're not trying for numbers, but...
Well, actually, I've kept a record. I didn't really mean to, but when I first started painting, it was such fun that I did. I was so amazed when people would buy them that I would write down. And I do have a total record. I have a record of how many I've done and who bought them and what date I painted them and what date somebody was kind enough to buy them or that I were a gift to somebody. Yes, I've done 1,120, I'm on the 128th right at this point.
1,128.
Yes. So, I do know. I don't know why I started keeping it, but it's just interesting to look back on.